Good evening. Welcome to Eretz Israel. Today was the first day after Hanukkah, but I've really felt it was the ninth day of Hanukkah. But there is no ninth day of Hanukkah. So what's going on? Well, we could call it Isru Chanuka. Isru Chanuka, we have this concept of Isru Chag, which is the day after the festival of Sukkot, the day after the festival of Shavuot or of Pesach. Isru means to bind, right? We want to bind the festival to us. We don't want it to go. We want to stay in holiday mode. It's festival. It's all the good stuff in life wrapped into a festival. And the Jews are attached to their festivals, not because the rabbis are teaching us, but because we live it and we know it, that life is a grind. A lot of times, it's cold outside. It's really cold out there in the big world, and we need some pleasure. We need some peace. We need some time together to enjoy why we're here. It's not all hard work. And anybody who tells you it is, if they say it's all work, they miss the point. And you say, well, then you get to be the biggest billionaire because you work 27 hours a day. Well, you might, but it doesn't mean your life is any better. You'll just have a little more power, a little more influence, a little more attention. And if that's what you need to feel good, okay, fine. But as Jews, simple Jews, we have these festivals that God gives us and we enjoy them and we don't want them to go. And so Hanukkah is gone. And parts of the planet, it's gone. Parts of the planet is still there. And we can grab onto Hanukkah and hold on to it. And this idea of the binding of the festival to ourselves, it's an interesting thing because we see it by as we said, the Hagim, and we also see the concept of binding when we talk about putting on tefillin. Because we bind the tefillin to our head and our arm, we're binding God's names. Those tefillin are filled with God's names, and we're binding those names to our head. Now, if you don't think that doesn't have a psycho-metaphysical impression on the brain, you're mistaken. And, they've used Kirlian photography to take pictures of people before and after they put on tefillin, and you cannot believe the difference. So, the binding of tefillin is also, we want to bind God to ourselves all the time. There's even a mitzvah to wear the tefillin all the time, except at night. However, that's for very special people who have that consciousness that hold the mindset. But we don't really want to lose the mindset of Hanukkah, the mindset of gratitude and thanks for Hashem for saving us. Well, from what? From the foreign cultures. For 8 days, we've been talking about the Jewish culture revolution. And I forgot to remember one thing that, we don't have to mimic the non-Jewish culture. And we do. But we don't have to, because we have our own music. We have our own fashion. We have our own culture. We have our own art. We have our own architecture. Now, of course, we learn from people all over the world. We believe in the wisdom of the nations. We learn from the wise people of the nations. We're not fools. We don't lock ourselves in ghettos and think that we know everything because we have the Talmud. We have everything. We have the Talmud, but there's more than the Talmud, even. When you have the Talmud, then you have the beginning of how to think in every possible situation on earth. But we still need the wisdom of the nations to complete this job. Now, so we want to bind the Hag to ourselves. We want to bind the mindset of Hanukkah to ourselves. We could turn this into the ninth day of Hanukkah. Now, we're not going to go out there and light 9 candles and make a blessing. That would be forbidden. Because we don't do things outside the authority of the rabbis. But we can be creative with our own hearts and minds and creative with our relationship with God. To say, God, today feels like it's still Hanukkah. Now we have another concept of binding by, of course, Isaac, our forefather, Yitzhak Avinu, who was bound to the altar. Now, the rabbis teach us that he was 37 years old when he went up on Mount Moriah to be bound to that altar. Now, you ask yourself a question. If you read the text the way it is, he's called a youth. And I guess in a world where everybody lives to be 200 or more years, then 37 would be called a young guy, a youth. But most people, 37 is already a full-grown man, hopefully. However, if Yitzhak Avinu, which we're told he knew he was going to be bound on the altar and he accepted the mission, and we're taught by the Midrash that the angels wept into his eyes and weakened his physical eyesight because he gazed so long into heaven through those angels. You can't just go into heaven for free and look around, go shopping. When you go into heaven, your eyes see what there is to see beyond the physical. When you go back to the physical, your eyes aren't the same. And that's why it says that Yitzhak's eyes were weakened by the time he got older, which is not an unusual situation. However, Yitzhak was bound on the altar, but why was he bound if he already accepted the job? If Yitzhak was a grown man and he already said to his father, Avraham Avinu, I will be the sacrifice for God. If that's what the prophecy told you, then I'll do it. So why would he need to be bound? Well, we know that there's a moment of terror before death for most people, because it's the ultimate step into the unknown. Who wants to face that? But the more time you spend with the Torah and with the Kabbalah, the more the two worlds start to show that there's an interface. There's a place where the physical and the spiritual meet. And when you know that place so well, you can just, jump over the little boundary of your body into a higher place. And the rabbis call it the kiss of death. And they say it's like removing a fleck of hair from the top of a cup of milk. It's not very hard to remove a fleck of hair from the top of a cup of milk. That's what the kiss of death is like. It's such a smooth transition. There's absolutely nothing to fear. It's actually one of the highest moments of pleasure possible to a human being. Now, on a dark note, there are people that are trying to reach that boundary through artificial means. They're trying to jump over to the next world. Some want to come back and some even don't. And they use drugs and they use other mechanisms to get so close to death that they can somehow straddle the transition. But that's not called serving Hashem. Hashem knows when to take you out and how long to keep you here, because he knows what we need to do. And I don't have to monkey around with that day in the calendar when we're called to return to the source. So being bound to Hashem, being bound to the festival, being bound to any of the mitzvot binds you to God on a panemius, an internal, in an intimate way. Hanukkah is not just a holiday that we keep. It is a transition in time that was carved into history because of the original events of Hanukkah. Carved into history. And this is one of the miracle revelations of Judaism, that we are partners with God and we change reality. We impact the universe. We are not merely spectators, and we're not robots, and we're not little kids. We are here to make impressions on God, and when we do that, he returns the impression back to this world in the form of, in this case, festivals. Because those Maccabees and those courageous men and women, especially women, because they were the ones getting abused most by the Greeks, their courageous actions, their self-sacrifice, carved a place in the heart of heaven, and that became Hanukkah, and that's still the Hanukkah. Every year at this time, we're not only celebrating that self-sacrifice and that courage, we're attempting to relive it again in our own lives. And that's my Isru Chanuka blessing for all of you. The 9th day is the day where we don't let go. We tell God, we're not letting go, God. You want to play a tug of war? Fine. We're holding on. We're holding on to Hanukkah. We're holding on to your mitzvah. We're holding on to your presence. We're not letting go. Because we love these festivals. We love these days. And if I don't love them or I feel a few bad moments on them, okay, I can work on that. I can look at that. Write me at avrahamshira.com or my Avraham at Gmail, I think it's called. Right? If you have a question, if something's bothering you, getting under your skin. Because Rabbi Natan of Breslev says, it's a beautiful thing, he says, most of the mitzvot are very easy. And you know, the hard part is not the mitzvah. The hard part is getting from not wanting to do it to wanting to do it. That's the transition. And when we good at that, get good at that transition from not wanting to do a mitzvah to doing the mitzvah, then we're going to be getting better, a little bit better at making that final transition on the big day that each of us is called. Because it's like a reflex muscle reaction to reality. When I can fight the inner resistance to goodness, all of a sudden the walls disappear. And that happened in the first story of the 13 stories of Rabbi Nachum, where the viceroy was trying to save the prince's daughter. She was inside a palace of the walls of water. And the prince, the viceroy said, I know my king. I know who made this palace. I can go in there. I'm not afraid. Because the minute you know it's God, you get your pass. And you release yourself from the fear and the tension, the fear of the unknown, which is the greatest fear. Besides public speaking. Although it's easier on Facebook in your own den. However, make no mistake. These festivals are here for us, and they're a gift. And when we feel the gift of it, we don't want to let it go. Just like when someone gives you something beautiful, you don't want to give it back. Excuse me, I like that Rolex, please. Don't take it back. Don't take back Hanukkah. Leave it here in our heart and our soul. Bind it to our mind, just like the tefillin. And then each day, you get a little bit closer to the goal. And it's that little bit that counts. Not the giant steps. All the little steps will get us to our goal. As an individual, as a nation, and as a race. The human race. And we're going to see wonders that we cannot even imagine. Bigger than the miracles of Hanukkah. God bless you all. And Isru Chag Sameach. And we'll see you again on all the platforms. Laila Tov.